why does everybody say if you buy real estate and you hold it, it's never going to go the wrong way? And typically that's because if you look, even when that cycle started way back here 18 years ago, and we went all the way up and then we pulled back, well, we're still higher here after the pullback than where we were when we started.
We are back here, guys, and my special guest here is Mike Magna. He's the principal broker of Keller Williams Innovation Realty in Kitchener, Ontario, Canada. Mike, it's such a pleasure to have you here, to have your experience as a principal broker and a real estate agent in the industry for a long time. So thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Steve. I'm excited to be here.
Beautiful. So what I want to talk about in today is really kind of go over the landscape of how real estate has changed, and there's many people out there who are, conservative in the way of, should I be selling right now? Should I be buying right now? Should I be investing in real estate right now? Because there's been so many shifts. I mean, we went through one of the largest growth in real estate values that we've seen in a very long time, to then watch one of the largest growth in interest rates that we've seen in a very long time, which obviously has impact on not only people thinking about buying real estate, but people thinking about getting into the real estate market as a whole, and just the affordability of it, and because real estate not only is an investment, but it certainly is a consumable in the way that people do need somewhere to live. So what have you seen specifically within the brokerage, and what are people doing about it?
It's been a wild ride so far, over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen pretty much everything, like you said. Biggest spike followed by a bit of a decrease. Interest rates, we've never seen this in history where we've seen this many increases this fast. So it's definitely got the market kind of topsy-turvy. If you like roller coasters, it's been a fun one. What we're really seeing out there right now is, prices they've peeled back obviously from the peak from spring of 22, end of February, first week of March. That's when we really hit our peak. Here in this region, our average property, average single detached home was in the neighborhood of 1.12 million, I believe, back then. And now we've hunkered back down to a little over 800,000. We've seen the rise followed by the pullback, and I do believe when you look at real estate, it's usually, if you look back over the last 60, 70 years, we have about an 18-year cycle in real estate. We got about 4 or 5 years where we have a slight increase, relatively steady, and then we have a small pullback for about 6 months to a year, followed by the boom. Now, anybody who's been around since 2017 in this business, you've been a part of the boom. And that was a super seller's market, right?
And that's actually a really interesting thing to talk about, because I mean, there was a stat that came out from the Auditor General a little while ago that talked about the years of tenure of real estate agents, and I'm going to probably misquote it, but it said something around, it was like 50% or 60% of the real estate agents that are operating today, have a tenure less than 5 years, and
Oh,
which is a pretty heavy stat, which means that most of those people have never seen a buyer's market. They've only seen a seller's market.
I would venture to guess it's actually larger. I mean, I think you're sitting around only 85% of agents make it through 2 years. But I
Mm.
can say with certainty, there's a lot of agents in this business right now that have no idea what real estate transactions look like when it isn't just, can I throw the biggest offer possible firm and see what happens. I've been, yeah, so like I've had the luxury of being around for something very similar to where we are now, not necessarily the same landscape. I mean, how can anything be the same landscape given what we've just been through here with these
Oh,
interest rates?
absolutely.
This is brand new to all of us. But what we're seeing though is, you know, when we talk affordability, Steve, and you being the principal broker with Real Approved there, you would understand more than most. I often talk about affordability with the buyers out there today, where there's a lot of people on the sidelines, and they're saying, I want to hold, I want to wait, I want to see where interest rates go. Well, let me ask you a question, Steve. When interest rates come down, what happens to prices?
Oh, absolutely. The inverse response.
Absolutely. And so,
And I think if you take that and you couple that with the 463,000 people, according to a report that came in from Mortgage Professionals Canada,
Mhm.
they said that 43,000 people came into Canada in the last 3 months. 463,000
Mhm.
new to Canada in the last 3 months,
Mhm.
and
Wow.
it was like 200,000 in the last year.
Right, and we're expecting about a
So
half a
so
million next year.
yeah, and so we look at that number, and that number is staggering. Where they're all going to live, and if you're a builder right now, and you're saying, hey, the government wants us to push building, great. If it costs us $400 a square foot to build, and we can only sell it $300 a square foot, why am I putting a shovel in the ground?
Is there a gap there? It doesn't make a
There's
lot of sense, and supply is going to be our issue for a long time to come. I'm not sure what it's
yeah,
something like 5.2 million homes we need across Canada to make this thing work. Southern Ontario alone, we're looking at like almost 2 million homes just to get us to a spot where we would be balanced again if rates were
yeah.
back to a sustainable level and everything was just kind of riding smoothly. I mean, I'm not in disagreement with where the rates are right now. I think it makes a ton of sense. The problem that I see is just like you said with builders not being able to build because we've got a false demand coming down. It's not like these people don't want a house or don't need a house. That hasn't changed.
Mhm.
That hasn't changed. One thing that's changed right now is the buyers are going pumping brake. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens.
Well,
You know,
I'm gonna respectfully disagree with you,
okay.
and that obviously makes a good conversation. And so when I look at the rates right now, and I look at the rates proportional to the value of what real estate costs,
Hmm.
tied to what the average income is, this is
Hmm.
where we start to see where there's chinks in the armor of having interest rates where they're sitting right now. Is that if fine, we say that real estate moves inverse to interest rates, that's going to drive down the cost of interest, or drive down the cost of real estate.
Hmm.
Which again, if I'm a builder, I'm not going to build anything. So we're going to have a supply chain problem. If we bring down the rates, what it's going to do is it's going to, yes, we'll see a short term blip, I think, in real estate values. I don't think that they will skyrocket, because I think there's going to be this reservation now that's, going to be, I mean, let's face it. In my lifetime, I've never really seen a drop in real estate like what we've seen in the past year. And, in the time that I've owned real estate since
Hmm.
2005, there's
Hmm.
been slight adjustments, but nothing material like what we've seen in the past year. And so I think the reservations people are going to have coming in, I don't think we're going to see people, going absolutely bonkers on real estate price. At least I hope that's not the case. But we need something in order for us to see a builder's appetite. We
Hmm.
need something where they can build at a cost, relative to what the cost of building is, with a surplus of profit, so that it makes sense for them to get into it, where it is also affordable for the buyer. Because right now, if you look at, say, something around a $700,000 or $800,000 purchase, you need a combined income, household income, of $186,000 to $190,000. And
Hmm.
that doesn't factor in if they have a car payment, some credit card debt, or anything like that.
Nope.
So, really, they're going to need an income of 200,000. Well, the average income right now is sitting around 86,000, I think, in Kitchener-Waterloo. So we're missing out on the income growth. I was watching CIBC analysts do a presentation where they talked about last year, year to date or whatever, there was an increase in incomes of 6% increase in incomes this year, which boggled my mind, because, as we see a lot of mortgage files come across the table, I haven't seen that in the buyers. But then I don't know if it was our conversation. I think it was our conversation where you corrected me and said, no, there's definitely an increase. It just happened at the minimum wage level, not at the buyer level, where the minimum wage went from, whatever it was, up to $15. And that's where it made the massive increase. So
Hmm.
all of the people who are not in the buying space are getting the bump, but the people who are in that, middle market, the middle class, is the one who's getting eaten alive, because they're not seeing an increase, but they're seeing an increase in their costs.
Yeah, well, that's 100% agree with you on that one, Steve. And when I was talking a little bit earlier about that life cycle, and typically you get at the end there like 7, 8 years of real boomtown, followed by about 4 to 5 years of pullback. And it's funny because you're saying, well, I've owned property since 2005, and I never saw that sort of a run up before, and that sort of consumer sentiment, the fear of missing out, everybody's jumping in. Well, you've only been around for that one cycle.
That's right.
Right?
Exactly.
And this is typically what happens. And why does everybody say if you buy real estate and you hold it, it's never going to go the wrong way? And typically that's because if you look, even when that cycle started way back here 18 years ago, and we went all the way up, and then we pulled back. Well, we're still higher here after the pullback than where we were when we started. And when there was this pullback in prices, when it comes to that end, and we start the cycle over again, now we're starting it up here this time.
Yep.
And then we'll see the pullback. So what tends to happen, and here's the reason for it, is once this happens right now, what happens is exactly what you said, is the difference between the cost versus the wages people earn. It gets so far out of hand that eventually we can't afford it anymore. People have a hard time affording an $800,000 home right now. When we bring interest rates back and it goes up to 1.2, they're still going to have a hard time affording it, right? But you'll see that little bit of a run up as it happens. Now, what ends up happening is as these prices come back, the first people to come back, it's going to be your investors.
Yep.
Oftentimes it's because the interest rates don't necessarily matter as much. They're coming in with much larger down payments, if not cash purchases, right? So the interest rate can be whatever, doesn't matter. The prices are back to a level where I believe I'm going to win now over the next few years. So they're the first ones to come back. What happens
Well,
when
and
they
the big thing for real estate agents, I believe, to take advantage of working with early adopters in the market is to use the same methodology that was used at the height of the market, but apply it to when we're at the bottom of the market. And I use the bottom as the proverbial bottom of the market. Whether we know this is the real bottom, I'm not at liberty to say. But if we're at this situation and somebody's willing to absorb risk because they have a long-term lens on real estate, your real estate agent during the time of the high of the boom, with one buyer would write 15, 16, 17 offers to finally get a property accepted.
very well.
Could very well, right? Why are they not doing the same right now with the buyer? Where if they were looking at the buyer's side, they could be writing 15, 16 offers at a price that's acceptable for that buyer at the risk profile of that buyer.
I think it's starting, Steve. I think it takes a little bit of time for the mentalities to switch. No different than it takes a bit of time for us to go from a let's list low and hold offers strategy to we're seeing that's not very effective right now. But has everybody adopted that as an agent? No, we're still seeing people try, right? Whereas, we're starting to see again, where was it before? Where we're going to list at market value and we're going to negotiate, which thank God we're back to a market that we can negotiate and actually represent our clients again. But it's the same sort of a concept there, right? Where if we're talking about having to throw out all these offers, one of the agents on my team just yesterday, we were sitting there talking and she showed me a listing. It'd been on the market for, I believe, 42 days now, which, in a full balanced market, that's not that long. That's normal.
Yep.
Now coming out of 9, 10, 12, 17 days average, now it's getting high. And she said it's at, I think it was at 830 or something. And she goes, my guy can only go to 750. So, well, what's the harm in talking to that agent? Let's find out. She goes, well, they already reduced their price.
Put it on paper. Write an offer.
That's what I said.
I remember back in 2014, which was my first year of real estate as a real estate agent. I was 2014. I did 43 transactions in 2014 as a real estate agent, most on the buyer side. And what worked really well for me is the property would come on the market that day. The very first day I would write an offer. Mm-hmm. The agent would call me typically, and they would be offended by my offer. And I would say, okay, well, that's fine that you're offended, but it's an offer. And if this offer expires 30 days from now, I'm going to come back and my offer is going to be lower because the market has now proven that even the price that I'm going to offer you today is too high. So I'm going to write an offer today and it's going to be at this, but 30 days from now, it's going to be lower. Mm-hmm. And because my belief is if they accepted the offer, they're not offended because they're actually happy because now the deal is transacted. Yes, it didn't transact at some higher price that was artificial because we all know listing price, especially when we look at this, like I sold for 100,000 over asking. No, you didn't. You sold for market value, what somebody's willing to pay for.
Mhm.
So the idea of over asking or under list price, any of those things are irrelevant. It's what did the house sell for
It's a
compared to
marketing
another
price.
something else. Exactly. The market price is the only thing that matters.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah,
you know, the idea that an agent come out, you don't have to wait 40 days. Put an offer today, very first day, slam an offer out, see what happens.
yeah. And if
What's the worst that
I'm
could happen?
nothing, and if I can remember
Exactly.
correctly, Steve, 2014, we were probably more like that 30 to 40 days as average days on market back then.
Correct.
And
Yep.
that's sellers were used to that. They were
Yep.
used to it, right? Right now, sellers, the real thing that most agents are struggling with is a seller expectation still. I think you and I were chatting a little while ago about just how quick this market is moving and shifting and transforming and just going berserk and then bananas and then dead. And it's hard for us to keep up with what's happening out there and how the market's behaving, let alone, you know, mom and pop's home seller,
Yep.
right? So a lot of the struggle right now is having sellers understand, well, here's where we are today,
Yeah.
right? And
Well, a lot
today,
of the things that I think are impacting them are external to the real estate market, specifically in government intervention. I mean, when you look at policy changes, that's a huge thing. When you just look at global changes, that's a huge thing. Like a lot of these things that are impacting are outside of, you know, this is how many sticks are in this house. You know, this is how the proximity of the neighborhood, all these things that we normally think about when we think about real estate, you know, the bigger impact that's impacting it is the global initiatives. And so that's the thing that's hard for I think somebody local to resonate with.
I would agree with you, and especially, I mean, we know that real estate, regardless, is a hyper local market. I mean, yes, we follow trends as an overall market will, but one city is going to be a little bit different than the other.
Yep.
Our total real estate market is going to parallel a lot what happens south of the border from us. And it's not just the real estate that default; it's the economy as a whole. If you notice, whenever the stock market's booming, so is the real estate market,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, totally.
Right?
Totally.
The markets tend to follow each other around, and that's just the economy, right? When it's up, it's all up, and when it's coming backwards, it's all coming backwards, right?
Absolutely.
And so when sellers are sort of hearing what's happening right now, they're still not totally equating that. How is it that only 6 months ago could have got another $100,000 for this property? Like that's a lot of money in 6 months.
Well, I think it goes down to the borrowing capacity of the buyer. I mean, everybody's buying leverage typically, right?
Well,
And when the cost of funds has gone up dramatically, the affordability goes down, which invariably affects the price.
well,
You know, if
100%.
if it was an under leveraged, you know, if you could not leverage real estate is only holds its value, and it can only sell the way it sells because it can be leveraged.
Hmm.
If it could not be leveraged, you know, real estate would sell for a fraction of what it sells for.
Well, yeah, I mean, so would cars. Any big
Absolutely.
any big
Anything.
ticket item, if I need to borrow money for it, it's only worth what somebody's willing to lend me to buy it.
That's right. Exactly.
If I could only buy anything with what's in my pocket, actually, you know what? That would be nice. Let's go shopping for houses with just what's in my pocket. Make a killing,
That's right.
right?
Well, it's definitely been great chatting with you, Mike. I want to continue this conversation. I think we need to do this on a very frequent basis. There's so many topics we can talk about. I know the one thing you've been following is that big thing happening down in the States with the National Association of Realtor and all of the fun stuff with that. And I definitely want to have another
Yeah, let's
chat
do
around
that.
that
Let's do
and
that.
get into those things because I
I'm
think
gonna I'm gonna
there's
I'm gonna mention it quick just so they're ready for the next one. There's a bunch of lawsuits happening right now in the states over buyers commissions, and it's not just in the states. We've got the same thing happening right now. There's a class action suit against CREA on the TREB board. So yeah, we can definitely talk about that. There's a lot of interesting things that can be coming down the pike.
Beautiful. Well, I really appreciate that, Mike. And guys, thank you very much. This is the Money Mindset Mentoring Podcast. We've got Mike Magna of Keller Williams Innovation Realty out of Kitchener, Ontario. And truly a pleasure to have you on the show and looking forward to having you on the next one.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Thanks, Ben. Bye now.
Bye.